Looking back at the little Demoness in the room, she began to pester Daniel again because she hadn't finished eating the chicken leg he threw out just now. I don't care. You must feed me another chicken leg. Without waiting for Daniel to respond, she said and load identity. She just opened her mouth, waiting for Daniel to feed her the chicken leg. Repeatedly doing so made Daniel angry. He picked up a chicken leg. He pushed the chicken leg forcefully into Yo-Yo's mouth again to prevent Yo-Yo from acting up. After all, this little Demoness had too many bad ideas, and he had to be careful not to be tricked when he least expected it. Just as the little Demoness sighed at missing another chance to trick Daniel, Brooks' figure had already appeared at the entrance of the canteen. He loudly shouted inside, "Remy! I'm here to save you!" When Remy heard Brooks' voice, he was also surprised. How could he have come here? What followed was likely another embarrassing situation. Brooks from Clown Miss Peak is here to cause trouble for Daniel. However, looking at the current situation, Saintess Remy is a bit at a loss. She is afraid that Daniel might blame her for such trivial matters, so she hurriedly explained. In fact, Daniel, as an ancestor-level figure, is not so narrow-minded. Perhaps it is to test Remy. Daniel waved his hand. He let Remy handle it himself. Brooks finally saw his dream girl in his heart and greeted her warmly. But he still, because of Daniel, had difficulty calming down and wanted to help Remy out. Of course, things were not as simple as they appeared to ordinary people. Remy could only gently inform him that it was a misunderstanding. She also had no leverage in Daniel's hands. But the more Remy explained, the more Brooks felt that the Saintess was being coerced and compromised. His tone turned unfriendly. How could you be willing to be the mate of such a villain? Although these words are harsh. But Remy is indeed willing to do so. And she also clarified to Brooks once again that Daniel is not a villain. In order to avoid Daniel's misunderstanding, Remy asked him not to be so affectionate and call her Remy all the time. Not saying this was fine, but as soon as it was mentioned, Brooks nearly exploded with anger. He instantly became agitated, suspecting that Daniel was threatening Remy to say such things. Then he pointed his sword toward the canteen and yelled loudly inside, "Vile scoundrel, come out! If you dare to threaten Remy with such despicable means, watch me dismember you." At this moment, Remy drew out his own sword. She pointed at Brooks and said, "I said, don't call me Remy. And me, as his maid. You have to get through me before you can lay a hand on him. Either you defeat me and get knocked down. Either be sensible and roll away yourself." Brooks never expected that. Remy, who had been together day and night, unexpectedly drew his sword against him for a stranger just as he hesitated. Remy had already struck with the sword. The fierce sword she passed by Brooks, making him even more incredulous and furious without an end. But Remy didn't give him any face at all. She also doesn't care about his identity as Clown Miss Peak Young Master. At least, she is the saintess of the prestigious celestial mystic sect. A young master status is incomparable to hers. At the same time, she also informed him that if he called her Remy again, the sword that just missed on purpose wouldn't be so simple. This will only fuel the fire of anger in Brooks' heart even more. Just don't scold her, but she even took action against herself for outsiders. But the next moment, Brooks' face suddenly changed and looked obscene. It seems that he must have some leverage to make the dignified saintess so devoted to him, and he must grasp this leverage. After all, he has long coveted saintess. It seems that this Brooks is not a righteous gentleman either, and has many ulterior motives. Then he concentrated his energy, ready to confront Saintess head-on. The last time he fought with Saintess was 3 years ago. I wonder how strong Saintess has become after 3 years. After saying that, the spirit chi condensed by Brooks became stronger and stronger. On the other hand, Remy seems to be indifferent. Ever since Daniel resolved his pure yang fiery essence condition, Remy seems to not care at all. Her cultivation achievement has been progressing rapidly, and it should be time for her to demonstrate her strength. Only to see Brooks, he unleashed sword chi several times stronger than before, seemingly convinced of his imminent victory. He even reminded himself that if he won, he would ask Remy to clear the way. Remy couldn't be bothered to argue any further. She is also sword chi condensing at the tip of the sword. With a single sword strike, she directly broke through Brooks's purple sword chi coming straight at her. A domineering blue sword chi burst out from the tip of the sword. It hit Brooks' cheek and pierced through the large tree behind her. With just one move, she defeated Brooks. What would it look like when a little girl starts a fire? Especially when she is a Demoness who has lived for over 2,000 years. Today, you will see for yourself. Brooks and the Saintess faced off, only to see a blue sword chi brushing across Brooks' fair face. It pierced through the thick tree behind him at the waist. On it, there were still flashes of lightning. Just when Brooks was shocked by the terrifying sword chi of the Saintess. Just heard Saintess Remy's charming shout, "Look at my sword." For even more powerful sword chi brushed past Brooks compared to before. The trees behind him once again exploded in response. Brooks was not hit. But he was also affected by this sword chi. His mouth showed a trace of blood from the shock. His figure was in a sorry state. Not to mention, even his fourth-rank spirit sword was distorted by this sword chi. At this moment, Brooks finally understood that Remy had reached the realm of mastering the 10 sword chi, which made it even more difficult for him to calm his heart. You should know that in the entire celestial mystic sect, no one has mastered the 10 sword chi for 800 years. Even though Remy is a saintess with exceptional talent, to achieve such a feat in just 3 months is truly shocking. How could Brooks not feel amazed by this? Seeing Brooks defeated, he was still calling her name. Remy's eyes turned cold, emitting an unstoppable murderous intent. He said emotionlessly, "Still calling my name." Brooks had never seen Remy like this before. He was both shocked and frightened for a moment. Then he knelt down with a thud. He quickly apologized. "Saintess, I called the wrong name. I'm guilty." Remy withdrew his sword and lazily spat out a roll, without even raising his eyelids. She turned and walked towards the canteen. When Brooks stood up, his face turned gloomy, feeling that the dignified young master had never been so humiliated, especially by the saintess he had admired for a long time. What made him even more unable to let go was Remy's sudden surge in strength made him a little uneasy. And most of this is related to that beggar. At this point, Brooks made up his mind. This person must be removed, no matter what. Suddenly, he lunged forward, swinging a deadly sword strike. Remy never expected Brooks to go back on his word like that. She didn't have time to stop him. She could only shout a warning inside. "Be careful!" And inside the room, little Demoness Yo-Yo is bothering Daniel again. Before, she made him feed the chicken drumsticks. This time she actually made him feed braised pork belly. Daniel could only helplessly say, "You don't have hands of your own?" Yo-Yo pouted cutely and said, No, I just want you to feed me." Daniel felt goosebumps all over his body at hearing this. Brooks, who had already rushed in with a sword, happened to see the scene. He cursed, "Besides Remy, do you have other women? This man deserves to die. He actually enjoys the company of many women." Then he swung his sword towards Daniel and the others. With a loud bang, the table split in half, and the food scattered all over the floor, especially Yo-Yo's favorite chicken leg, which ended up in a mess covered in dust. Little Demoness was so heartbroken that tears nearly welled up in her eyes. Chicken leg. My beloved chicken leg. However, Daniel was quick and agile. His own beloved wine was timely saved in his hands. It looks like he was not surprised at all, as he knew that little Demoness didn't need to worry about such trivial matters at all. Little Demoness has already gone berserk, her face showing anger. Her delicate hands have already grabbed Brooks's sword. Brooks couldn't believe that a little girl actually caught his spirit sword barehanded. Before he could react, with a crisp sound, Yo-Yo clenched her little fist. The spirit sword shattered with a sound, and Brooks's face was filled with panic. He did not expect that his full-force attack would have no effect at all. And his spirit sword itself is a 4th-rank mystic artifact. And the little Demoness has already released powerful purple spirit chi. Angered, she said, "I don't care. I'll strike with all my might." "What 4th-rank mystic artifact?" Then, she directly lifted a 200-pound stone stool with one hand. Her eyes filled with fierceness, she gritted her teeth and said, "Dare to ruin my food? You deserve to die." When little Demoness is angry, even ancestors have to make way. Brooks has the worst luck. He made the little Demoness release her Dharmakaya, and a powerful pressure immediately swept through the entire canteen. Brooks was completely suppressed, unable to move, and dared not even breathe. Then, the little Demoness lifted a 200-pound stone stool and smashed it angrily towards Brooks. At that moment, all you could see was the little Demoness lifting the stone stool, swinging it crazily at the unfortunate guy. She kept cursing, saying, "How dare you ruin my food? How dare you ruin my food?" Brooks was hit with everything. Fortunately, the stone stool was smashed. Little Demoness finally stopped her hand. However, little Demoness still felt not angry enough. She immediately lifted another 200-pound stone stool and prepared to smash it again towards Brooks. At this critical moment, Artie finally made a move. He said in a deep voice, "Yo-Yo, sister, that's enough. I'll just prepare another table of food for you." Then he glared coldly at Brooks and said, "What are you doing here causing trouble? Can't you see I'm entertaining important guests?" Brooks then realized that the Supreme Elder was also here. Before he could say anything, he was kicked into the sky by the Supreme Elder before he could even speak. The scene suddenly changes, and little Demoness is directing the disciples of Celestial Mystic Sect to clean this pavilion. Regarding the previous matter, the Saintess also expressed an apology to Daniel. However, this is just an amusing incident for Ancestor Daniel. It doesn't matter. Although it's not a big deal, Daniel pointed out that Remy's adaptability needs to be improved. If she had been as unguarded in the outside world as she was just now, she would have lost her life long ago. Remy just remembered that if it had been Brooks who had made a move on her just now instead of Daniel, the consequences would have been unthinkable. She is thus keeping his teachings in mind. Daniel looks as if he's sipping wine. Arthur becomes more and more apprehensive as he watches. In fact, when Brooks first arrived, he sensed it and said he was preparing to let this boy try it out. Unexpectedly, he didn't need to take action at all. Moreover, both Yo-Yo and Saintess are so respectful to this man. Arthur's questions and doubts in his mind continue to grow. Arthur previously saw Remy display the perfected 10 sword chi, so he asked, "Remy, when did you perfect all 10 sword chi?" Remy quickly replied, "Supreme Elder." It's all thanks to Daniel's help. As soon as he heard it, he associated it with this beggar again. Arthur was shocked once again. But he still didn't believe Remy's words. He couldn't believe that an outsider could possess their Celestial Mystic Sect's 10 sword chi, but what embarrassed him was Daniel's reply happened to be that he could. Upon hearing this, Arthur's expression grew colder, and his attitude towards Daniel became unfriendly. After all, the 10 sword chi was the exclusive skill of their Celestial Mystic Sect. How could an outsider possibly know it? There must be some kind of sinister plot or trickery. Just then, Yo-Yo couldn't bear to watch any longer. She pointed at Arthur's nose and scolded. "What's wrong with what I taught? Just a 6th-rank martial art. How dare you call it a master skill? If it weren't that my martial art isn't suitable for men to practice, I wouldn't even care about this garbage martial art." The way Arthur responded can only be described as defensive out of guilt. "My dear aunt, even if you don't appreciate this martial art, please don't spread false information about it." Little Demoness is getting angry. She saw Arthur still arguing cunningly. She is even more angry. "How? I teach my husband martial art. Do you have any objections? Want to interfere? Haven't seen each other for many years, didn't expect you to have grown bolder. Arthur was sweating profusely when he was criticized. Even though he felt extremely wronged in his heart, he could only back down for now. In no time, a table of fragrant and brightly colored dishes was carried over by two people. When Arthur ordered the two people to step back, little Demoness and Ella couldn't hold back any longer and rushed to the dining table. Little Demoness even held a big pig's trotter and started gnawing on it. She is eating without caring about her appearance. This almost makes Arthur not recognize this former big sister anymore. Yo-Yo, big sister, how long has it been since you last ate? With meat in her mouth, Yo-Yo replied vaguely. Not just a while. I almost starved to death. The speaker had no intention, but the listener understood. Arthur did indeed remember that she had said she was locked away by her husband back then. He further associates her constant calling of Daniel as her husband. Could it be that she was locked up by him? Otherwise, based on her personality, how could she be so devoted to this person? Arthur becomes increasingly alarmed as she thinks about it. She was held captive for over 2,000 years, and this person has clearly also survived for over 2,000 years. How could he not have cultivation achievement? And over these thousands of years, he still looks like a youth. At the very least, he must be at the divine transformation realm. What is the purpose of a divine transformation realm existence like him coming to my celestial mystic sect? Of course, Arthur never imagined that this person is the founder of their sect. But that's a story for another time. Arthur raised his glass and tentatively asked for Daniel's name. Arthur really is cunning. After all, there are only a few experts with a full name in the divine transformation realm. If he were to use a fake name, it would definitely indicate some ulterior motive towards their sect. Daniel is finally going to reveal his real name. I wonder what expression the current Supreme Elder of the Celestial Mystic Sect will have when he hears it. When Arthur deliberately asked about Daniel's name, Ella on the side also chimed in. I don't know my big brother's name either. As for Saintess Remy, let alone. After little Demoness took a bite of the big pork trotter, she telepathically communicated with Daniel, asking, Should I change the topic? Daniel smiled faintly and replied telepathically, It's okay. Then he pressed the wine glass with one hand on the dining table. He smiled at everyone and said, I am Daniel, once this was said. Arthur and Saintess were petrified on the spot. How is this possible? It's simply unbelievable. Arthur simply couldn't believe it. So he spoke again to Daniel to confirm. Are you Daniel? Do you know? I am the Celestial Mystic Sect ancestor, also named Daniel. Is it just a coincidence that you have the same name as him? Or do you have ulterior motives, thinking that a bit of power can claim my Celestial Mystic Sect ancestor identity? As soon as Arthur finished speaking, little Demoness covered her mouth. She trembled all over, holding back laughter without making a sound. Seeing little Demoness' mischievous appearance, Daniel angrily pointed at her and said, Can you please behave more seriously? However, little Demoness intentionally replied, Don't worry, I am a disciple of the demonic sect and have received professional training. I usually don't laugh, unless the rest of the sentence hasn't been said yet. Finally unable to control herself, little Demoness burst into an extremely exaggerated laughter, filling the entire pavilion with her demonic laughter. She laughed so hard that she couldn't stop slapping the dining table with her small hands, saying, No, I'm going to die laughing. The esteemed ancestor is actually suspected of trying to claim the ancestor's identity, and Daniel's old face has already darkened. This Yo-Yo is too good at making trouble. There was only a dull thud. Yo-Yo got bumped on the head. She covered her head to stop laughing, pouting with dissatisfaction. However, Yo-Yo's laughter made Arthur a little puzzled. Is she mocking him? Or is she telling him that this person is really their ancestor? Yo-Yo burst into laughter again upon hearing Arthur's question. Stop asking me, I can't stop laughing, she said, with no serious expression in sight. Arthur decided to challenge Daniel again. So, young man, can you explain if there is any profound meaning behind your name? Daniel found the question quite interesting. I've had this name since I was born. You're the first person to ask me if there's any deep meaning behind it. Arthur's expression turned even more grim. Listening to the person's response, could it be that he really considers himself the ancestor of his celestial mystic sect? Little did Daniel know, he took a sip of wine. He said lightly, "If you interpret it this way, that's also acceptable." Just as he finished speaking, Arthur slapped the table furiously in a reckless manner. He pointed at Daniel's nose and scolded, "My celestial mystic sect has been established for over 2,000 years. Although it has declined now, you are the first person daring to impersonate the founding ancestor." Seeing Arthur become disrespectful towards the legitimate ancestor, Yo-Yo then reminded Arthur to sit down and speak politely. But as it concerns the great honor of the celestial mystic sect ancestor, Arthur cannot afford to ignore it, and still refuses to speak. Now the fiery temper of little Demoness has been aroused again. "I said sit down. Do you believe me? Speak nicely. Dare to disrespect my husband." After that, she instantly turned into a cute little sweetheart and stuck to Daniel. Daniel looked at her with disdain and said, "Are you afraid that there isn't enough drama? Stay away from me. Go enjoy your chicken drumsticks." Even with little Demoness as proof, Arthur Old Man still doesn't believe Daniel's words. He threatened that this time he would let it go because of big sister Yo-Yo's face, but Daniel couldn't continue to see himself as Daniel. And Daniel just took a sip and sighed. "I didn't expect that even after more than 2,000 years, the celestial mystic sect still respects me." Hearing this, Arthur flashed a scroll painting in his hand. And this scroll painting is the only ancestor portrait handed down by their celestial mystic sect. So what fun things will happen when this painting is unfolded? Do you know how handsome Daniel was back then? When Arthur unfolded the only existing ancestor portrait, Daniel's appearance from 2,000 years ago is finally going to be revealed. Little Demoness is a long-awaited appearance, but Daniel couldn't help but think, "I'm not dead yet. Are they worshipping me?" This is the self-portrait of ancestor from back then. This person has flowing purple long hair, an extraordinarily handsome face, golden and deep eyes full of affection, making people inadvertently fall into them. "Isn't this a strikingly aloof handsome man?" Arthur proudly said while holding the scroll painting. "Have you seen it? This is the appearance of my celestial mystic sect ancestor. Such temperament. It's not something an ordinary person can imitate." Arthur pointed at Daniel again and continued, "With your poor appearance, you haven't even imitated a bit of my celestial mystic sect ancestor's appearance and temperament. So plain and unremarkable, how dare you say you're Daniel?" Arthur's series of soul-searching questions left Daniel speechless for a moment. However, when the little Demoness kept shaking her head back and forth, comparing the portrait with the current appearance of the ancestor, it indeed didn't seem like the same person. How could there be such a big difference? Suddenly, the little Demoness' demonic laughter erupted once again. "Is this you? I'm really laughing out loud. Were you this handsome before? Why didn't I know?" Daniel raised his eyebrows incessantly and asked in a very awkward manner, "Who painted this picture?" After saying that, he pointed a finger at the little Demoness, who was still smiling incessantly. The little Demoness finally stopped laughing. She held her small head and said in a aggrieved manner, "I didn't expect this to happen." Then she stuck it on Daniel's body and asked, "Honey, were you really this handsome before?" This made Daniel completely speechless. He pushed away the face of the little Demoness with one hand and once again asked Arthur who actually painted this. Arthur did not expect that the impostor in front of him, who claimed to be ancestor, dared to question the authenticity of this painting. His expression became even more disdainful. "Let me tell you, don't even think about impersonating ancestor. This painting was created by Alan Grandmaster, the chief disciple of celestial mystic sect ancestor Daniel. It has been passed down to this day and is definitely not fake." Daniel was very surprised to hear that it was Alan. Little Demoness, however, said, "Is it that little doll?" Alan from the celestial mystic sect has actually become a little doll in her mouth? As Daniel and little Demoness pushed each other, thoughts seemed to return to 2,000 years ago. The person sitting on the ground with a bellyband is indeed the Alan from back then, who is currently drawing for Master Daniel and little Demoness. He quickly finished the painting and showed it to them. The two of them took the painting and looked at it. Their mouths were wide open in shock, unable to close for a moment. They took a closer look. Daniel was depicted as a middle-aged greasy uncle. Little Demoness, on the other hand, is an old lady, especially with the stark contrast between the two figures. One is bloated and large, the other has an exaggerated oval face. Daniel showed a moment of helplessness, while little Demoness burst into laughter. No wonder when Arthur mentioned that it was painted by Alan, Daniel showed an incredulous expression. Even little Demoness felt that such a sophisticated portrait didn't quite resemble Alan's style, believing that Arthur was teasing them. Arthur was not pleased to hear this. He casually put away the portrait while saying indifferently, "Yo-yo, how could I possibly be teasing you? It's definitely Alan's authentic work." Later, he was very certain that the man in front of him was not Daniel at all. He asked again, what was Daniel's intention? It seems that this Arthur old man is completely unwilling to believe his own words. Daniel couldn't be bothered to explain further, and just mentioned a name. Everything afterwards was Arthur's self-righteousness. Can't people have the same name anymore? Arthur was speechless for a moment. Daniel then picked up little Demoness and strode forward. They had more important matters to attend to because tonight was the night of the full moon, the best time for the establishment of the Ella Foundation. If they missed it, they would have to wait until next month. Ella asked in confusion, "Big brother, what is foundation establishment?" Daniel laughed and replied, "You will know when the time comes." Little Demoness laid down behind Daniel again. She pouted and complained that she hadn't finished eating yet, so she could only continue eating chicken legs tomorrow. Finally, this farce came to an end as Daniel left with the three beauties. However, when Arthur heard about the full moon night and foundation establishment from Daniel, he was shocked. Suddenly, he thought of the moon cauldron treasure, but it had long been gone from the celestial mystic sect. What's going on? Isn't this clown Miss Peak's young master Brooks? He was beaten into a pig head again by little Demoness.